Hello, gang. It's Chris Angel coming at you for another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us, and it's my birthday today. It is my birthday. 44 years old. I don't feel 44. I still think I'm in my 20s for some odd reason, although the bald spot on the back of my head would suggest otherwise. But that's all right. We're going to talk a little bit about the 4 life lessons. Listen, I've had so many life lessons in 44 years of life, but four big life lessons I've learned in life that have shaped my life as I know it. So let's just start, shall we? Let's just dive in. I don't exactly know where I'm going to go with this. I always tell people who are in my programs, like, look, so much of marketing is just about you sharing your truth with people. You don't have to have a script. You just have to have a place to start. Today I've got 4 places to start, and we'll see where they go. But ultimately, marketing is just a conversation you're having with the person on the other side of the camera, and that's you in this instance. So here is we call it life lesson number 1. Let's call it. I learned this in my 20s before I had kids, and it was seek first to understand. Seek first to understand. That's how I learned it. Seek first to understand. And if I look back in my life, even as a teenager, there were elements of this already in my life. I was a curious kid, I think. I was very interested in people. In college, I used to always ask people what they were passionate about. I just wanted to know people. But as I got older and I got into business in my 20s, the way I heard it then was seek first to understand. And there was a noticeable shift in my behavior professionally because I started to ask a lot more questions. And inside of that, I would ask more questions. Like I would keep digging, right? We used to call it, I worked at Keller Williams as a real estate agent. That was my first career. And we would call it going 5 deep. Like you would ask a question and then ask another question and ask another question. And you would ask 5 layers of questions in order to keep figuring out what would come up, right? So in other words, I want to understand what it is you're after or what you're saying. I want to understand where you're coming from before I prescribe some kind of a solution for you or tell you how I can serve or help. Let me first understand what you're trying to accomplish, which is really helpful in real estate, right? But consider this, like it is interesting in this day and age of the coronavirus that there's a lot of people posting things and then other people jump in the comments and they don't actually seek first to understand. They just start spouting off stuff in somebody else's post. That happened to me yesterday, right? I posted something for perspective, and then people jumped in and started to assume they knew what I was talking about without asking me. Like they just wanted to just comment and vent or something without understanding, right? There's a lot of stuff, gang, when you can hold your tongue and try to get where someone's coming from before you just jump down their throats. Or conversely, in business, before you just offer a solution and sell something, why not ask a bunch of questions so that the person feels seen, feels heard, and that you actually understand what they're trying to do with their life? It's super helpful in marketing, right? Like seeking first to understand where somebody is coming from before you just try to talk about features and benefits. Yeah. It's super helpful. So also, by the way, seek first to understand is super helpful in marriage if you're married or in some kind of a significant relationship. There are a lot of times in my marriage where my wife would look at me funny, or as she calls it, have resting bitch face, and I would make it mean something, and I'd be like, why are you looking at me like that? What's up with that? And she would be like, what am I looking like? So many stories where if I had just seeked first to understand what was going on over there, things would have been a lot easier, right? So anyway, that was a big one for me. I love that one. That's really important to me. And I still live my life that way. I'm very conscious to try to understand where people are coming from. So that's been really helpful for me. It served me well. Here's the second one. The second one is just to constantly tell your family how cool they are. So like when I think about my wife and my kids, I read a book before I had my son. My son's 15 now. Before I had my son, it was called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. What to say when you talk to yourself. And it was by a guy named Shad, S-H-A-D, Helmstetter. And one of the visual he gave in the book in this one chapter was like, picture that kids have this keyboard on their chest, and you could program them, you could code them from the very beginning by telling them great things about themselves. And I loved that. It always stood with me. So from the time my kid was born, and now I have a daughter too who's 13, just finding ways daily to tell them how cool they are, what you see about them, what you notice about them. My kids are one of the best things I've done. Like I don't want to say I lucked out, right? I think my kids are amazing. I also think that my wife and I were very intentional about what we put in our minds about how we parented our kids. And so that's been really helpful for me. And not just my kids, right? But my wife, telling my wife all the time that she's hot, she's cute, she looks good, she's smart, she's funny. I love her laugh. Like there's so many great things about who she is. And I just have, it's served me well to just get in the habit of saying great things that I notice about my family and choosing to spend time there. So that's been really good for me. All right, third one. The third thing, third lesson in 44 years is about expanding your mind or your perspective. This has been, whether it's reading books or going to courses, whatever, just constantly trying to think beyond what you can see right now. There is something bigger. There's a bigger question to ask. There's a bigger goal to set. There is a bigger purpose for your life. If you can push, it's served me well to continue to push what I can see out there. It can be scary. I'll say that too. Like it is scary to to deal with the bigness of vision that you can get for yourself. It can also be scary to think in a bigger perspective where it's not about goals per se. I remember in high school I went to this thing called Rainbow Boot Camp, and it was a multicultural week-long camp. And we dealt with racism, we dealt with sexism, we dealt with homophobia, we dealt with I can't even remember all the stuff we dealt with for like a week. I said sexism already. That was very uncomfortable, but it was very mind expanding for me as a teenager, right? And just how it is for other people. When I went to when I was in 2000, what would I have been in 2003? I went to the Landmark Forum in 2003, completely expanded my perspective about the stories that run my life. What do I, like so many of us live inside a story and we don't even know we live inside a story, right? When you can expand your awareness to see the story you live inside of, it actually allows you to choose, if you want, a different story. So the third lesson is just continuing to expand your mindset and your perspective. That's served me really well. By the way, it also makes life interesting ongoingly because if you keep expanding your perspective, it never stops, right? You can keep finding new levels of awareness, and that makes life interesting. Okay, here's the fourth. Here's the fourth and final lesson at 44. This has been really good. Find connection to work that feels aligned for you. Find connection in work that feels aligned for you. You don't always know what that is, but there's always the next right choice to be more aligned. So I think when you're young, you try a lot of things on, right? You try a lot of things when you're young, and you're like, nope, this is too far one way, and you try something else, no, this is too far that way. I remember out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I was a custodian at a church, and that was a big no. That was a hard no for me. I did that for like months, and I was lining up chairs and mopping floors, emptying waste baskets by myself in the middle of the night. I'm a people person. I get energy from people, and I'm not an attention to detail guy, so that was a hard no for me. Then I went the other way. I went and I was getting a master's in education, but I didn't like teaching sixth graders. Like I went in trying to be sixth graders' friends, and they destroyed me. They just chased me out of that school so fast. I didn't finish that program. So I corrected again, right? I kept course correcting for the next best choice for what felt aligned with my skills, my abilities, my perspectives. Once you get to something that feels more aligned, then it's about finding the purpose in it, right? So for me, it was aligning myself to my gifts and my vision and my goals. But then inside of that, it was like, okay, now how do I really fine tune my life and my work so that it feels like a self-expression? It's not just that it works for my skill set. It's that I love doing it because it has so much purpose in it for me. There's meaning in this work, right? So when I became a real estate agent, it aligned with some of the goals I had. I love my freedom, so it gave me freedom. It put me in contact with people, and I love people. And as you heard from my first lesson, I got to seek to understand and be curious about people a lot, and that was fun. But there wasn't any magic in the transaction for me. I didn't really appreciate the work of it. What I love is, but now it's great. I feel more aligned at 44 than I've ever felt before, and that's because I'm doing work where I get to help other people who want to help other people, right? Like a lot of my clients are coaches, life coaches, transformational coaches, business coaches, health coaches, but people who are trying to help other people. And I love that conversation. And it brings with me this piece of business, like helping people understand how to market in business, because marketing is such a weird thing for those of us who are people oriented and not into technology. Like, obviously there's a role for marketing, but most of us don't feel comfortable in the marketing. So finding a way for people to say what they really want to say to the world in a way that feels aligned gives me a ton of meaning. Like, I just love that work. So life is hard when you don't have work that is fulfilling. You spend a lot of hours in a week going to work. And if that work you're spending time in doesn't feel aligned or meaningful or purposeful, then life becomes kind of this heavy thing you've got to carry. So for me, that fourth lesson, finding work that has meaning and feels aligned has been a big one for me. And I've chased it hard. And it took some time to get here, but I'm here. Like, I'm in it now, and it feels good, right? This is a long way from being a custodian at a church. It just feels good to me now. So that's it, gang. That's it. Those are the 4 lessons. Those are 4 big lessons. There have been so many, but those are 4 that were just right on the surface for me today that I wanted to pass on to you. Hopefully those encourage you. I'd love to hear any of your big life lessons in the comments. And until we go live tomorrow for another episode of Marketing for the Rest of Us, have a great night.